Hello, everyone. Just want to welcome you to today's webinar. My name is Peggy Mazurko. I'm the CAD/CAM Product Marketing Manager here at Planmeca. Just want to thank you today for joining our webinar with Dr. Wally Renne, titled Digital Smile Design, the Perfect Combination of Mathematics and Art. Just want to go through a few housekeeping items before I turn the floor over to Dr. Renne. Just want to let you know that everyone is in listen-only mode. We are going to have time at the end for question and answer. There is a Q&A feature through Zoom at the bottom of your screen for any questions that you have for us. So you can use that for Q&A anytime throughout the webinar. If you do need assistance for sound, screen, anything like that, feel free to send us a message through the chat so we can assist. There is going to be one CE provided, so stay tuned at the very end and we'll provide a link for you in the chat feature so you can receive your CE link as well as the code. The CE link will also be sent to you in the follow-up email, which is sent out probably on Monday. And the webinar is being recorded, so you can view this webinar again at a later date. And you can also view other archived webinars that we've done in the past on the Planmeca website under the training section. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to Dr. Wally Renne. Thanks so much for being here today and giving this presentation on smile design.
Thank you guys for allowing me to give this presentation. I think this is a topic that's just super exciting because, you know, we used to have to do a lot of these things manually using digital calipers and have the patient sit in the chair for a long time and measure their face and their teeth and everything like that. And so the ability to use digital smile design is an integral part of my practice. And so I'm excited to kind of share with you how I exactly go about using this software to treat patients. You know, a little bit about myself, if you don't know, I am the Assistant Dean of Innovation and Digital Dentistry at the Medical University of South Carolina. I also am Assistant Director for the 2-year digital dentistry residency that we have, and it's an exciting residency. It's kind of the first of its kind, and we're super lucky to be able to treat patients using the very best technology on the planet. So I'm very excited to be here to kind of show you what we do, and we're going to just advance on. I don't know how accustomed you are to Planmeca at all, but this is sponsored by Planmeca, so I want to go through just really quick a few little things so that you understand exactly what we're talking about today. I think most people probably know that Planmeca makes the best CBCT system on the planet with their ProMax line and now their Viso line. They are the #1 in the world for CBCT. But what a lot of people don't know is that they also have some other phenomenal hardwares, including a really cool printer and a very phenomenal chairside CAD/CAM system that includes a scanner and a mill. And today we're not going to really talk much about that, but what we really are going to spend a lot of time on is the software that kind of glues all these systems together, these different hardwares together. Because in the past, if you had all these different kinds of systems, you would have to have 4 or 5 different softwares and navigate and import and export all these different things. With Planmeca, I think kind of the sweet sauce, the magic sauce behind what they do really revolves around not only creating phenomenal hardware, but it's the magic sauce is the software as well. And they've created this software called Romexis. And what Romexis is, it's really an open architecture kind of digital platform to house all your patient information, whether it's 2D photographs, 2D radiographs, 3D radiographs, STL files from 3D intraoral scans, PLI files, face scans, you name it. It's this phenomenal repository of all your patient data in one kind of spot. And it's not just a passive data storage software. You're able to do amazing things with this software. And I'm going to go through a little bit of that right now and kind of show you what Romexis is. And then we're going to take probably an ultra deep dive into the module called Smile Design by Planmeca. And so it's all into this Romexis software suite. Now it's kind of exciting right now because Romexis has been completely kind of redone with Romexis 6. And Romexis 6 is beautiful. It's ultra fast, and you can see here we're just jumping from patient to patient, and all that patient's information is instantly available, even through a true PACS type system if you want. It's all networkable as well, so you could have it on multiple different machines. Like here at the university, we have it on 53 systems. And so you could jump from 2D radiographs to 2D intraoral photos. In this case, these photos were made with the Emerald scanner by hovering over the tooth and snapping some photos during the 3D digital impression. But you could see how we could jump from photo to photo. We could edit contrast, we could annotate, we can measure. There's basically nothing that you could think of that's not included in the software that you could do with your files. You could even float 2-dimensional on top of 3-dimensional. So in this case, we have some intraoral photos, and we could go to the CBCT through the 3D object browser and go right to that tooth. And you even could do intraoral scans in this software using the Emerald S here. And you could do more than just scan if you wanted to. You could even do CAD design. So if you wanted to design your own restorations, you're able to do that as well in what's called PlanCAD Easy, which is like a CAD CAM module within Romexis. And so like I said, this is all just one software that's kind of packaged together with different modules. You could do cephalometric analysis, you could do Bolton analyses in there, kind of all these different modules. So here I am just taking an intraoral scan in Romexis and just showing you that. Now here I'm jumping to a mirror image CAD design for one of my patients that I'm making an adhesion bridge for. And I think I'll show you guys this case in a few minutes here, slow it down a little bit so you can see this case here, because I actually did use Smile Design on this case because we had a little bit of a spacing issue. And so I'll show you that in kind of some great detail. Here we have a large digital wax up. So we have, in this case, 6 units that I'm sculpting for one of my patients, and I'm gonna go ahead and 3D print this model so that I could transfer it to their mouth using a putty wash technique to basically bring digital into reality for them. So you basically design in this instance, and of course we'll talk about this, how to digitally design like this using Smile Design parameters. And it kind of just keeps going, and there's nothing you cannot do. I think this is unmatched in the industry as far as exactly how robust this is. You could import any STL file, you could import things for milling. You could even go straight into PlanCAD Premium, which is like an ExoCAD here, where we're working out anterior guidance on a virtual articulation. So there's a lot that you could do within Planmeca's Romexis. Jumping right now to a scan body scan that we're going to fire off through Romexis Cloud to True Abutment to get a custom titanium abutment manufactured. What's cool about that is that within Romexis, there's a hot link for True Abutment. So you just click the button and it goes right to them, and you can see it on the top right there. And then what they do is they design the crown for you for really no cost to you at all. All you do is if you have a chairside mill, you could mill that restoration and make a screw mentable restoration on a custom titanium, in this case, gold anodized abutment. And the all-in cost for that is like $200 versus, you know, you could imagine a custom abutment and crown from some labs is up there $700 bucks, depends. It also has this really cool kind of analysis module in their 3D kind of surface module where you could align 2 separate and distinct scans. So in this case, this was separated by a year, and you could measure incisal edge wear. And so in this case, we can see we have some pretty decent wear in red, showing about a 0.7 millimeter difference at just the year mark in this patient's occlusal bruxism. And so it's a good verification that the patient definitely needs an occlusal guard or something like that, or some restorative work. Smile Design and 3D face scans, merging intraoral scans with 3D face scans. This is the digital playground if you want to go high tech in your office. The sky is kind of the limit on which you could do, and it's only limited by your imagination. They even have this Photoshop type module where you could mirror image teeth, sculpt teeth on 2-dimensional, and then transfer that in this instance to the 3D world. If those of you who are 3D printing, you could instantly hollow and base your models. That was pretty much real time, guys. There's nothing quite as fast as this. Look at this. We're going to do these 2 upper and lower models that are open shells right now. We're going to instantly hollow and base these models in about 10 seconds. So here we go. Now we're ready to go to 3D printing. So we could have those models watertight and ready to print. But like I said, you know, today we're not able to go into all these different modules. In this case, we're doing a Bolton discrepancy analysis there in that software. And of course, Planmeca has perfected the 3D software with their imaging, and there's really nothing that you can't do in this software, from planning virtual implants to making your own surgical guides. There's STL export, unlimited STL export. It's really powerful, and you could even send off and get a report back from, say, like 3D Diagnostics and have a reading done if you wanted to, if you were nervous about reading your own CBCTs. You could merge your intraoral scans to your DICOM data sets. You could plan all your implants. They have like 200 implant manufacturers in the database, pretty much everything that you would ever want, with all sorts of different sleeves. And, you know, they've really made this software just comprehensive. And it's one of those things where you don't know that you want the module until you use it and you see how powerful it is. I think their surgical guide module is probably the best that I've seen, and definitely have run across a lot of modules over time. So that's just a quick glance into Romexis. Now, today we're going to be focusing on Smile Design. You know, out of all the suite modules that they have, Smile Design is not quite as well known, and that's why I'm going to kind of try to talk about it today. You know, people are confused on exactly, why do we do Smile Design? Is it a gimmick just to sell to patients' cases, or is it truly useful as a tool for diagnosis? And so I hope today to kind of explain that it's not a gimmick to sell cases to patients, and it's something that's truly diagnostic. And so let's go through, when do we use Smile Design? And, you know, everybody knows that I love chairside milling and I love doing CAD/CAM dentistry. And, you know, for the most part, you don't need to do Smile Design for 1 or 2 units. So in this case here, we have a lateral incisor, and, you know, we chairside milled it out of Emax there on the 30S mill. And probably don't need to do, it's overkill to try to do any kind of Smile Design with a single unit. It's just not necessary. But I will show you a case where I've been kind of burned in the past by not doing a Smile Design on a single unit. And so we'll talk about that. But most of the time, you're not going to break out Smile Design for a single unit. This is a case that I wish I did. So this patient presented to me, and they are on chemotherapy. They're not able to get implant right now, and they wanted to do something conservative, restoratively. They didn't want something removable. So I'm like, okay, no problem. I'll just mill out a ponic with a wing and do like a Maryland bridge or a resin retained fixed partial denture, if you will. And I did, and I put this in, I bonded it in, I looked at it and I said, oh man, I did not pick up that there's a little bit of a tooth size discrepancy between that space and tooth number 9. And I feel kind of bad about it. Patient was happy, but when I look at it, it's like, if I had thrown that into Smile Design, I would have known immediately that there's a little bit of a size discrepancy between 8 and 9. And I probably would have added some resin to tooth number 9 to decrease the space before doing the restoration. So, you know, I have learned in the past to sometimes, when you're doing a single central, break out the Smile Design software. So here's a perfect case in point. This is a very similar case, actually. This patient, once again, cannot get an implant at this site. And so we're going to do a resin retained fixed partial denture, an adhesive bridge or Maryland bridge, or if you're in Europe, you might call it a Yamashita adhesion bridge. And so what do you notice at first? You know, at first I was like, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and slap a ponic in there. But then I got to thinking, I'm like, space doesn't seem right. So we threw it into Smile Design software, and it's a 3-second thing. You take the photo, you load it up into the Romexis Smile Design, and you do a quick mirror image of the silhouette of the adjacent tooth, and you can see we have major overlap. And so I morphed the tooth about 1 millimeter to know how much I needed to take off so that we could have symmetrical kind of pontic between 8 and 9, so we could get that shape, that size correct for this patient. And so sometimes you do break it out for the single unit, but not often, and typically not even for 2 units. Like in this case, really didn't need the Smile Design software for these veneers. This is immediately after delivery on this young lady. So when do you do Smile Design, besides the odd single unit where you look at it and you're like, something's not right, the size just doesn't feel right? And you might say, well, just pick up a probe and measure. You know how many times I've measured wrong and not really have understood what I needed to do by measuring with the probe? It doesn't give you the visualization that you need. In addition to that, it's hard to explain to the patient who can't see the probe and understand that there might be a size discrepancy. So you might need to do 2 veneers versus 1, or you might need to do a resin and a veneer. And so, you know, I break out the software often. And the first stage that you really utilize the software in is patient communication. So in this instance, this lady presented to me in my practice, and she said, I want 2 veneers on my 2 front teeth because I hate my front teeth. And I immediately look at her smile and know that 2 veneers is not going to help her smile. But how do you present that to a patient without either one, trying to sound like you're trying to sell them a lot of veneers, or sound mean, like, you know, hey, 2 veneers is not going to help you. You need like tons of work, right? That's really mean sounding. And so I humored her. I said, okay, yeah, we could do 2 veneers there. No problem. But before we start shaving down your healthy tooth structure, let's take a look at what it would look like. And so I mocked up 2 veneers in Romexis Smile Design on 8 and 9. And she looks at them and she's like, why are they dark like the rest of my teeth? And I said, well, we're just doing 2 veneers, so we can't brighten them, because if we brighten them, you're going to have 2 fluorescent teeth in the front. And so I actually used a slider that I'm going to show you guys and brightened them up. And she's like, oh, that's terrible. They look so fake and funny. And I was like, okay, well, what if we did 4 veneers? And I was like, what if we did 6 veneers? And so we keep going down the line. And she's like, I like that better, but I still don't like that they're not bright. And I said, well, you see how your premolars show in the photographs? If you had 6 bright veneers and your premolars were dark, how would you like that? She's like, I wouldn't like that. And so then we go to brighten them and we go to 8 veneers and so on and so forth. And at this point, it's more of a patient communication tool. And you might say, well, those don't look ultra realistic. And I like that they don't look ultra realistic, because there's some smile design softwares that literally take like somebody else's mouth and puts it in another person's mouth. And it's so pretty, but I could never achieve that final aesthetic. So I like that this is almost just a smidge cartoony, because it's supposed to be just a simulation. And I actually like that. So now I'm able to actually take the silhouette that we talked about, the patient and myself, and transfer that to 3D. And we're going to go through that a little bit later. But before we go to jumping into that, we're going to talk a little bit about some facial measurements that you should do for all your complex aesthetic cases. And a lot of this is coming from the book called Global Diagnosis. If you don't have it, you should probably get it. Dr. Robbins is a fantastic prosthodontist, and it's definitely worth checking this out. But these are the forms that I use for my patients when I do any kind of facial or smile analysis. And I used to have to do all this manually by caliper, and I would measure each tooth. It would take forever. And so we're going to go through how we do all of this kind of facial analysis on the Romexis Smile Design software. But before we go into details on how to use the software, I'm going to show you just 2 cases. You know, I decided to do a little different today. Normally I show like, 50 cases and then we ask questions. But today I'm just showing 2 cases, and then we're going to go deep into the software so I can teach you how to actually use the software and how I use it. So this first case is an early case of mine that I did with my colleague, Dr. Evans, who is a fantastic periodontist that I work with here at the university. And this patient presented to me. He's a war veteran, and he has night tremors where he has these nightmares and he grinds his teeth. You might say that he looks like he has airway issues and all sorts of things, and that's definitely part of the equation. But when I look at a patient like this who's lost vertical and has compensatory eruption and is kind of at this pseudo class 3 right now, the first thing that goes to my mind is, where am I going to put the teeth in the face? Because it's an outside-in approach. So I have to figure out where these teeth belong in the patient's head, because that's what the implants are ultimately going to be based off of when we plan this case. So in the past, we would, try to mount this and wax it by hand and everything like that. But now really quickly, we could actually do digital smile design. So here we are in an earlier version of Romexis Smile Design, waxing this teeth using patients' facial midline, lip length, repose, and everything like that we're going to go through today to find out where the teeth belong in the face, okay? And we're going to go through some great details on how we determine the central incisor position and things like that. And now we're just doing a quick little mock-up in Romexis PlanCAD Easy here. It could be done in any software. It could be ExoCAD, You could use 3Shape, you could use whatever you want to do this mock-up. And now we're merging that mock-up to the patient's DICOM data set, CBCT. So the first thing that we merge is the intraoral scan, okay? And then we make sure that we have a really close match of those two separate and distinct 3D files. And then we go ahead and we bring in our waxup. Our waxup was done based off of the facially driven smile design in Romexis. And so now we're going to use those positions to determine the locations of the teeth and therefore the locations of the implant in the bone. And in this case, we're planning some Astra OsseoSpeed EVs, and we're going to go ahead and set our sleeve heights. And everything's merged, everything's ready. Implant centric view to make sure that we're right where we want to be for these implants. Now here's the surgical guide module. It's literally, you just circle the area you want the guide to fit and trim the flash. It's probably one of the easiest guide modules on the planet. And so now we're going to go ahead and make sure that we have support around our sleeve housings. And now we're going to go ahead and 3D print this because it's OpenSTL export. You can get that file out with unlimited exports from Romexis. And so, you know, here we have a pre-treatment smile design that's determining the location of the teeth, which ultimately determines where the implants go in the bone. And now we're on the day of surgery where we're placing this now. This is a tooth-borne surgical guide. And Dr. Evans here now is going to be surgically placing these implants. And, you know, by the way, it's kind of not fair because the whole appointment took him 30 minutes. To place all these implants that's like from patient first sitting down in the chair till implants are placed. And, you know, the patient even said, why did I take off work today? And, you know, because we're not doing, these are flapless implants here, so there's a lot less post-operative sensitivity and swelling. So the patient didn't even realize that anything was really done. This is just done under local anesthesia here, so no sedation. And so what's cool, because we have a digital design already, we could go ahead and pre-print a provisional restoration that we could pick up on the day of surgery if the implants torque, and we could be ready to go. So there's no fumbling around with provisionals or prosthetics. We actually already did all the work. And so in this case, we're placing the implants now, and we in this instant milled. It might have been 3D printed, I can't remember. This case was around 5 years ago. So we have torque, so now we could extract those remaining 3 teeth there that were prepped, which were holding on the, basically those teeth were holding on the provisional restoration from before. And this is our 3D printed, basically out of PMMA, NextDent, crown and bridge, nano hybrid material, and it's almost identical to the smile design which we originally did. So this is the first case I really used smile design on, and it made me a believer. So now I use smile design on every case. That's going to be complicated. So here's a patient, and I'm going to walk you through this case, and then we're going to get into the weeds on how to use the software. I calibrate the photos based off of iris diameter of 11.8 millimeters, which 98% of people have an iris diameter of 11.8 millimeters. Now I'm altering the silhouettes on these teeth to get a little bit more length, a little bit more of that length to width ratio of 0.78 that we want. And I'm going to sculpt it now in 3D. And you could decide to sculpt it in any software you want. So in this case, we're doing an additive wax up. So we're not reducing her teeth at all. We're bulking them out just a tiny bit, in some case 0.3 of a millimeter. And we're using the silhouette from the two-dimensional smile design here in PlanCAD Easy, and we're melting the incisal edges to match that, because when you design digitally like this, you lose all facial reference points. And so I really like the silhouette to be able to help guide my three-dimensional design. And so now here we're getting the kind of the incisal arc in place the way that we want it. We're going to go ahead and add some embrasure lines. Now, alternatively, you could wax this in this case, PlanCAD Premium, which is ExoCAD, where we have an ultra low dose CBCT for the virtual articulation based off of the patient's terminal hinge axis. To get the condylar guidance is all measured on the CBCT. and we could work out excursive movements at a greater detail than, say, if we just did it in Planmeca Easy. So to be honest with you, most of the time I'm just in Planmeca Easy. Unless it's a severe occlusal disharmony case, then I'm probably going to go to some type of Planmeca Premium or ExoCAD. So now we have the waxup, and we're going to 3D print the waxup. Here we are in the kind of model analyzer module where we're just going to go ahead and create a quick little hollow based model, printing it on the Creo C5 printer here, flat with no supports because it just makes it faster. And we're going to pop that sucker off of the build platform and make a putty wash. So there it is. There's the additive wax up, putty wash, and squirt some Bisacryl in the patient's mouth and add it to the teeth and start to see what's going on. Okay, so the patient's like, I think maybe they're a little bit too bulky here or there, and we might have to do some preps. So here she is on the day of preps. We decided we need to prep the canines. Based off of that additive wax up, based off of the transfer to the smile with the putty wash of the 3D printed model, we knew that we had to bring the cuspids down a little bit more lingual. And so here we are using the Emerald S here, taking an intraoral scan. And by the way, you know, this is a little bit earlier of a version of the software. They are constantly making this just better and better. The scanner has become, with the 6.3, the latest version, is one of the most accurate scanners that we've tested. So they're always innovating. That's one of the great things about Planmeca. But here we are now designing these veneers, no prep veneers on 7, 8, 9, and 10. Crown type restorations on the cuspids for several reasons. One is to build up canine rise, which she was deficient in, and also to bring those cuspids just a little bit more palatally. And so here we are with the sculpting. And so now we're fine tuning. Basically the software copied the wax up, and we're adding a little bit of 3D anatomy. You can see these restorations are about 0.3 millimeters thick on the veneers, especially the no prep veneers. They're very, very thin. And so here we're gonna mill them out. In this case, we're milling in the 30S mill. For those guys don't know, that's Planmeca's kind of flagship mill. It's really cool because it has these direct drive linear motors. What that means is no chatter. So you can mill things super thin like this and not get chipping. They have awesome technology when it comes to their chairside mills. So it's really cool. And so, you know, after all that, this is what they look like on delivery here. And sorry for the kind of the black outline there, but just something going on with my computer funky. But yeah, really cool stuff to be able to do. And so now I'm going to show you how to do it. We're going to go through this software probably at a greater detail than you would ever want to know. And I'm going to load up a patient, and we're just going to go to town. So this patient is just, this would be as if the patient's coming to you for a consultation. You're going to make 3 photographs: repose, smile, high E smile, and retracted smile. Okay, with retractors. And we're going to show you what to do with these photographs and how we use them to diagnose the patient. So here we go. Now this is this patient in repose. So as you know, repose is the physiologic rest position where the teeth are slightly separated and the lip is at rest. And she complains, she's here for consult because she complains of a toothy smile or a gummy smile, kind of both. And so the very first thing that we do in the Smile Design software is we calibrate her interpupillary line to be parallel to the horizon. And so what you do is you, at first, you draw a line perfectly in the center of the pupils, and you drop a line at subnasally, and what it does is it uprights the photograph to be parallel to the horizon. And now what we're going to do is we're going to calibrate the pixels of the photo, because the computer doesn't know what a millimeter is on this photo. And I know that most people's iris diameter is 11.8 millimeters. So I'm telling this computer that 288 pixels is 11.8 millimeters. And now it's going to calibrate the entire photo to that measurement. And if you didn't want to do the iris diameter, you could have measured anything on the face at the day of the photograph, like maybe the mesial distal width of tooth number 8, and you could have measured that and calibrated the photo. So now I'm going to drop some horizontal lines using the drop a horizontal line tool. I'm going to do glabella, soft tissue glabella, which is the most prominent midpoint of the brow. I'm going to do an interpupillary line. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and drop a line at subnasally, which is right at the base of the nose. And I'm gonna drop a horizontal line at the mid-commissure line, which is usually parallel to the interpupillary line on most people. And I'm gonna go ahead and drop a line at soft tissue menton down here at the chin, okay? And from these lines, I'm gonna do most of my measurements of the repose. The first thing that I wanna know when I'm doing measurements of my patient, I wanna know, why do they have a toothy repose? You know, is it vertical maxillary excess due to excessive downgrowth of the maxilla? You know, is that why they have a toothy smile? I don't know. So we need to figure this out. And so I'm gonna go ahead and measure the facial thirds, and I'm gonna start with the midface. Now the midface is from soft tissue glabella to subnasally. Okay, and so here we're dropping a measurement of 61.7. Okay, and the number's not important so much as the ratio. So now we're gonna measure the lower face. So it's subnasally to soft tissue menton, and we're at 66. So we have a discrepancy because typically these numbers are identical. They're a 1-to-1 ratio on most people. And we have to figure out, why is the lower face longer than the mid face? Okay, typically it's one or two problems, the mandible or the maxilla. Okay, and typically when patients complain of you know, a toothy or gummy smile, we think it's the maxilla that's the issue. So let's go ahead and measure. So we're measuring the maxilla, which is from subnasally to mid-commissure line, and that's 17.9 millimeters. And now we're gonna measure the lower third, the mandible, which is mid-commissure line to soft tissue menton, which is 49.5. Now, typically the maxilla is 1/3 of the total distance. So 1/3 of 66.8 would be around 22. And so right away, I know that we have actually a deficient maxilla. We do not have vertical maxillary excess in this case. We have a large mandible. Okay, so we do not have a deficient maxilla here. So what's going on with this patient? Why are they showing so much maxilla when they are in repose? So we need to dive deeper to figure out what's going on with this patient before we just start shaving down enamel and doing all sorts of restorative on her. We need to figure things out. And that's why I love this software, because I love doing these workups on all my patients, because it really helps me understand what the patient needs from a restorative standpoint. So I'm gonna go a little bit deeper now. I'm gonna measure the upper lip length from subnasally to the inferior border of the upper lip. 14.8, that's extremely deficient, guys. The normal for a 30-year-old female is 20 to 22 millimeters. So she is extremely deficient on her upper lip. How much tooth is visible in repose? 6.1 millimeters, that's a lot of tooth. Typically for a female, we're about 3 to 4 millimeters of tooth visible in repose for a young female. And we know the upper lip extends 1 millimeter per decade after 40. And she has a super deficient upper lip, okay? So that's an issue. So I'm gonna go ahead and save all these measurements, and it's instantly integrated into the electronic health record. If you're using Romexis, it's just right there. I'm gonna go ahead and save it as a JPEG so I could send it to a laboratory if I needed to, and we could have these facial measurements in her record if we need to. But you know, this tells me already a lot of information that I need to know. This patient probably needs Botox. We need to figure this out. So let's keep going. So I'm gonna merge now her repose to her high E smile, her full smile. And Romexis has a little feature in the smile design software that makes it really easy to merge photos. Basically, you pick common data points on the teeth, because the teeth are the only thing in the photos that hasn't changed. Everything else has changed because the smile is going to distort everything. The chin, the lips, the nose, everything changes but the teeth. And you use this transparency slider, and I'm going to go ahead and get these to be identical. So by picking these common points, and I'm able to fine tune adjust this almost down to the micron to calibrate these two photos together. This is extremely important. I think this is a powerful feature of Romexis here, where now I could slide back and forth and the teeth will not move, but the lip and nose will move, of course, because we're going into a smile shot. And so now I can measure all sorts of things, differences between, say, lip movement and all this. So let's go ahead and measure central incisor length. She's at 9.1. So typical is anywhere from 10 to 11. It's kind of your average. 10.4 is a number people like to throw around, but it's anywhere between 10 to 11 on most people. So she's got a short central incisor. And you might say, well, is that altered passive eruption? Is there CEJ hidden under there? And that's all stuff that you need to figure out with an exam. clinically. See if you could palpate and feel that CJ. 8.2 width, so she has more like a 0.9 length to width ratio. And we know from some studies done by Mong and published in JPD that the average is more around 0.78 for that ratio. And so we need to lengthen. We know we need to lengthen a little bit. Let's figure this out. Lip movement. So we go from the old inferior border of the lip to now the new inferior border of the lip. And we see that lip moved up 4 millimeters from repose to smile. Typical lip movement is about 6 millimeters. So it's actually a good thing that her lip's not moving up that much. Soft tissue exposure, 3.8. You know, you kind of want a maximum of 2-ish soft tissue exposure. It could be a little bit more on the lateral, so we could get 3, but 3.8 is a little bit gummy here. I'm going to drop a gingival line now, and I clicked the wrong cuspid here, so I'm going to just move that line. I'm going to start on the gingival line is the gingival zenith of as many teeth as you could get to be coincident. So I'm going to go ahead and move that line down to tooth number 6, and it will fall right on 9 and 8. And the lateral incisors should be around 1 millimeter coronal to that line, which they look like they're about. But if you notice that cuspid number 11 is apical to that line, so she has some gingival architecture asymmetries that will need to be addressed, whether surgically or orthodontically, I don't know yet. We haven't really finished analyzing her smile. Okay, so we have all these cool little measurements, and we've learned a lot already about what's going on with this patient. And, you know, what I'm thinking already for this patient is Botox of the upper lip. We can really get a little bit of length of the upper lip, 1 or 2 millimeters, which would make a world of a difference in this patient who has a 14 millimeter upper lip. And what we do with Botox in this instance is we're going to try to suppress the actions of several different muscles. You know, we have levator, labii superioris that we're going to get with Botox. We have zygomaticus minor. And then we have this crazy muscle that kind of bridges to the nose. It's levator, labii superioris, aliquote nasi, the longest named muscle in the human body. We have to get those guys to just calm down a little bit, let that upper lip drape down. Would really help this patient. In fact, it might take care of what they call a gummy smile, this patient's chief complaint. In addition to that is the spaces. So, you know, I would actually do the Botox and then retake the photographs to see what we need to do restoratively. But this patient's here for a consult, so we're going to go ahead and actually virtually sculpt this as if we weren't going to do Botox on the upper lip, just so I could show you guys what we would do. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, all these measurements once again. I like to save everything. And we're going to go ahead now and focus on the teeth. So really we focused on the face at first to figure out what's going on. We've diagnosed she has a short upper lip. She has actually a deficient maxilla, not a vertical maxillary access. And she does not need like a Lefort 1 osteotomy to move the maxilla up. If anything, we have to try to go the opposite way with this. So let's keep going and see how we go on to now the tooth silhouettes, because that is just half of the equation. So now we're going to go on and we're going to now start with the smile shot. Okay, so last time we started with the repose. Now we're going to start with the smile shot, and I'm going to redo the calibration because we're starting this kind of as if it was from scratch. We have a blank slate here, so all the measurements are gone. And once again, the first thing that we do is we correct the angle of the photograph, which was taken crooked. Sometimes patients stand crooked. Sometimes the photo is taken crooked. And so we're just going to make interpupillary line parallel to the horizon with nasally and subnasally marked to get the midline and interpupillary line and everything like that. And it's going, you'll see once you hit it okay, the photographs is going to upright a little bit. So now it's perfectly parallel to the horizon right here, based off of this patient's face. And so once again, I'm going to calibrate the photograph to the iris diameter of 11.8 millimeters. Like I said before, 98% of people have, that's why there's not a lot of contact sizes. It's like, you know, they have like 3 different sizes of contacts. when you go get fitted for your contacts. They're mostly all the same for those of you who wear contacts. But the average iris diameter is about 11.8 millimeters, plus or minus 200 microns on 98% of people. Now, some medical conditions like glaucoma could lead to altered iris diameters and things like that, but you could measure anything on the face on the day of if you wanted to calibrate the photograph. So now we're going to the two silhouettes. We've already done facial measurements, and we're trying to get the teeth in that 11 to 10 millimeter long ballpark range for her, because she has around 9 millimeter long teeth. And we know that we really can't lengthen them incisally because she has basically a short upper lip. So if you lengthen them incisally, it's not going to be good for her repose, for her relaxed look. She's going to look even more toothy. So we're going to try to lengthen them a little bit gingivally, so maybe just a millimeter. Okay, very minor. And so what I'm able to do with the software with these two silhouettes is I'm able to move them all at the same time and keep the dimensions that I want, or I could distort the silhouettes individually and mirror image them. There's a lot that you could do with these silhouettes. So right now, I'm just trying to get them to fit the smile arc by altering the size of all of them at once. And once I have them relatively close, okay, I am now going to probably start to do individual manipulations of the teeth. So here I am now. I'm going to go ahead and stretch that lateral down a little bit, right click and hit mirror image to the contralateral side, and it instantly mirror images that silhouette on tooth number 7 all the way to 10. Same thing here, I'm on 12, and I'm going to manipulate this tooth number 12 here and get it kind of where I want it, and then I'm going to right click and mirror to tooth number 5, and so on and so forth until I'm happy with the way things look. So I'm just barely touching that lower lip there, mirror image it to the other side, and manipulating that. And we're pretty close, but the patient doesn't like the shape of the teeth. And so what's cool is we could pick any shape. There's like, I don't know, 7 different shapes that you could pick from. There's round, ovoid, square, triangular. There's multiple different shapes that you could just click and start to change the shape of the teeth. She wanted a little bit more squarish shape, I think. So we're going to kind of go a little bit more square with these for her. And we're going to go back and start manipulating that shape of a silhouette. Okay, so now here we are manipulating those silhouettes. A little bit sped up here for you guys because don't want to run out of time. I want to show you everything that I want to show you today. And barely touching the wet dry line of the lower lip. Try not to lengthen too much incisally. Lengthening on the laterals, a decent amount there. Now we're going to do the lip silhouette. So basically you get this kind of silhouette that you draw around the lip, and each one of those points is a morph point. You could also double click anywhere on the line to get an additional morph point. So you could have complete freedom to put this where you want it. But what this is for is because we're now going to load the retracted shot in the next step, and this will help the shadow fall naturally on the teeth, and so that the teeth won't poke through the lip. You'll see it. The lip will now embrace the teeth rather than the teeth being facial to the lip, and so you'll see that in a minute. Okay. Now that we have that lip outlined identically, we're going to load in the retracted shot, because we're going to learn a lot from this retracted view. And we're going to merge the retracted shot to the smile. Just like we merged the repose photo to the smile, now we're merging the smile photo to the retracted. So here we are, I'm picking hard tissue common points here. But we're gonna take our time to do this correct, because if this merge is wrong, the whole case could be thrown off. And so I'm gonna go and find coincident spots between these two photographs. And it's kind of important if you're gonna do these photographs that you don't have the patient move between the photographs like this and tilt their head, or your camera is not tilted, so that they all could be kind of taken at a very similar angle, which makes this part foolproof. So now I'm gonna turn the smile shot transparent And we're going to make some fine manipulations of the dots to get these to be identical here. Right there with those. This is probably the most tedious part of the process, but also one of the most important parts of the process. So you'll see me spending a little bit of time here. This is of course not sped up at all. I wanted to really explain this to you guys so that you understand, you know, merging these two separate and distinct photographs so that we could do proper measurements after. So now we have a perfect merge, and what you're able to do now is slide back and forth and jump from retracted to lip smile. And you could start to see a whole bunch more as you're designing this two-dimensional silhouette. And so basically what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to fine tweak. Now, typically I do this with the patient in the chair. Okay, so this is done. Patient's talking to me. We're going through this together. It's an hour appointment to do the photographs and the smile design. And their second appointment is the 3D printed wax up that is transferred to their mouth, should it have been an additive wax up. So now I'm playing around with the opacity of the silhouettes. I want to show you guys some of these features. So you could adjust a lot of points on these silhouettes if you want to. Surface texture, opacity, chroma, brightness, basically value, chroma, and surface texture are the three that I mess with the most. So right now you can see they look a little bit fake, a little bit cartoony. And once again, I like that. This is not a sales gimmick to try to like get the patient to sign on the dotted line that they want that smile, which is like, you know, somebody else's smile from, you know, that they don't know. This is more for you guys, you and the patient to talk about their smile and to start sculpting the sizes of the teeth in the face, okay? And we could get them to look ultra realistic. I'm going to show you that in a minute. You could change the color. You could change the opacity and things like that. Here we're going to decrease the chroma a little bit. And you could brighten and darken as much as you want. But there's a way to make them look ultra realistic if you wanted to. We'll go through that. But I don't like to do that. I like to just do these kind of cartoony silhouettes. Patients are blown away that you're taking the time to do this for them. Patients who are getting their smiles done typically shop around. And the dude that they went to before probably slapped an alginate, sent it off to the lab, and got a wax up made. Nobody, trust me, nobody sat the patient down and did this with them. So, I mean, they're already just super impressed with the whole process. And so I'm going to show you another cool feature of the smile design software that's like Photoshop for teeth. And so once I get these silhouettes the way that the patient likes them with the color that she wants, we're going to go a little bit deeper into the smile design software. Yeah, so I'm changing the kind of the opacity of the teeth so they look less opaque. And so they're starting to come along. They're starting to look more realistic in the patient's face. And now what we're going to be able to do is we could do a ton with this silhouette right here. We could export it into 3D software if we wanted to do the three-dimensional wax up, which is what we're going to do in a minute. But before we go on to the 3D software, I want to show you one last feature, which is this kind of Photoshop for faces. So I hit the little brush icon right there, and I get all these new tools. And there's a ton of cool new tools. There's Warp, which lets you drag tooth structure. There's Mirror and Clone. Clone, I'll show you Clone real quick. Clone essentially just, you click an area to get your clone point, and then you drag, and it's copying that line. Okay, and you do have undos, so you don't have to be scared to screw everything up. There's also Warp. Warp is really cool. You could take the tooth, and it's almost like a rubber tooth, and you could drag the tooth and sculpt it the way you want it, which is phenomenal for crown lengthening cases where you need to lengthen teeth and get an idea of what they would look like gingivally and incisally. So so here I am doing a little bit of virtual aesthetic crown lengthening on this patient, and I like the way that tooth number 8 looks. So now I'm going to mirror tooth number 8 onto tooth number 9. So here I am using the mirror tool, and I don't have to get it perfect at first. I want to show you guys. There's really nothing you could do wrong. You could undo, you could go back and mirror again. So now I'm going to click the incisal edge, and you want to mirror just the incisal edge over. It's really fun. It's cool. Patients are typically blown away when you do this. It's really, really a good tool for them to be able to see what all is involved in construction of their smile. And I like spending the time with my patients when I do this. It's my favorite appointment that I do. You know, my 1 hour consults, smile consults. And so now I'm just speeding this up so I can show you guys where we're morphing the gingival architecture. We're mirror imaging line angles of contralateral teeth. We're cloning things, and we're zooming out because we're so zoomed in right there. We're at 50 times mag pretty much. We're way too close. And so now I'm overlaying our silhouette, which had my proper proportions that I wanted the smile to be. And I'm sculpting the teeth to match the proportions. And I'll show you why we do this in a minute. It's because we could get an ultra realistic kind of look at the teeth. And so let's now go to the 3D, because you know that was all cool, but none of that really matters if you can't really get a physical, tangible product out of it. You know, you do all that work, but you need to be able to get that into reality. And the way we do that is with 3D design and 3D printing. And so now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you really quick. Just one of the things that we're going to do is PlanCAD Easy Wax Up in this particular instance. So here we have the final silhouette. We have the teeth sculpted. We have a more realistic look to her smile because we cloned her natural tooth underneath. And we're going to get the silhouette out of the software. And there's 2 different ways that you could get this silhouette out of the software into other software if you wanted to. You could actually export that silhouette as a STL file, a 3D file that could be loaded into any software. Or you could export it as a transparent overlay on the screen, which is what we're going to do in this instant. I'm going to show you the STL export later. But here's this little silhouette. And we have this silhouette. By the way, you guys notice the midline deviation. A midline deviation of 2 millimeters is considered unnoticeable by most people. So not an issue. If there's a cant to the midline, then we have real issues. So now I'm in PlanCAD Easy, and I'm going to do an additive wax up on this case. I like doing additive wax ups whenever I can because additive wax ups can be transferred to the patient's mouth. If you have to reduce the teeth virtually and then wax, you can't transfer that to the patient's mouth. So you never get to walk around and see what their smile would look like. And I don't like that. So if I could get away with it, I'm doing an additive wax up. And so here I'm in the software designing these no prep veneers, I guess. Now, this software, I think, has some of the most powerful free-form sculpt tools on the market. Some softwares will give you a little bit better initial proposals, but there's not a software out there, even ExoCAD, that has tools that allow these kind of free-form manipulations to occur and as fast. So I love the ability to add, even in this case, tertiary anatomy, imbrication lines, all sorts of things, and this will show up in the printed model. So I could print this at 50 micron resolution and have all these little micro surface texture anatomy show up in my putty wash, which will then be transferred to the patient mouth if I want to. So it just depends on what you're doing. I really enjoy sculpting on this software. But right now, I don't know how these teeth would look in the patient's face because I don't have any reference points to go by at this point in this software. So now I'm just going to take the silhouette. I'm going to drag the silhouette over the teeth, and I'm going to line up the cervical areas, and I'm going to now start to sculpt. And I can see that 8 and 9 are a little bit long, so I'm going to go ahead and melt those down a little bit. We're really close to where we had our smile design. So the next step for this particular case is to go ahead and 3D print that model. Now, Romexis is open, so everything's exportable as STL files. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to export everything. In this case, I'm bringing them into Mesh Mixer. And I'm going to drop a base, slice it, and I'm going to combine the veneer wax up to the model and make it all one solid watertight model. Okay. So this is just showing you what the STL export of the silhouette looks like, guys. Okay, so once again, that model will be 3D printed and we will do a putty wash that you guys have probably been doing forever. and transfer it to the patient's mouth. Okay, anyway, so, you know, I think I went a little bit too far into the weeds today. And so we're gonna open it up to some questions now and see what you guys have questions about. I would love to answer some questions. Let's see, so go ahead and please use the Q&A if you have any questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Renne. Gosh, what a powerful tool for dentists and patients. You know, one thing I do want to mention is that there is a free 30-day trial of Smile Design on the Planmeca website if you are interested in trying it out. We can send a link here. Thanks, Brent, for sending that link in the chat. So you should be able to see that if you did want to try it out and try some of these features that Dr. Renne was mentioning. But we do have a few questions here, Dr. Renne. The first one is, if a patient needed cosmetic nose surgery, should they do that prior to a Smile Design consult?
Yeah, actually, you would do two Smile Design consults. One would be prior to cosmetic nose surgery. You would do a Smile Design consult to be able to kind of articulate to the surgeon some concerns that you have. For example, in a patient that has a deficient upper lip, you want to point that out to the facial surgeon so that they don't further shorten the lip and things like that. So it's kind of a collaboration. Most cosmetic surgeons aren't using facial analysis software, so they would probably be impressed by it as well. And then you would definitely have to do one again after healing of the surgery, because it will change. Lip movement is sometimes altered by cosmetic nose surgery, and you want to see that lip translation. Once again, in this patient, it was 4 millimeters. On average, it's 6 to 8 millimeters from repose to full smile. So there's a lot of things that we need to take into consideration with that. That's a good question.
Perfect. All right. And then next question, any gingival contouring or gingivectomy required?
Yeah, that's a good question. In this case, definitely some minor crown lengthening would be required, probably surgical with some osseous removal, or you could do orthodontic intrusion followed by veneers. It just depends. We would have to check and make sure, like for example, on the lateral incisors, we'd have to see if there's any type of altered passive eruption that occurred on those lateral incisors and where the bone is in relation to the CEJ before we determine what kind of gingival architecture surgery is going to be needed.
Excellent. Next question here. How did you decide the size of the anterior teeth as in the case of the severe microdontia?
That's a good question. And so there's a couple studies, interestingly enough, you know, if you look at the average size of a tooth, of a central incisor, which determines the size of everything else, it's somewhere between 10 and 11, okay? And so, you know, there's other studies that look at the iris diameter, and the iris diameter could set the mesial distal width of the central incisor. For me, I always try to be in that 10 to 11 millimeter range. That patient had a Bolton discrepancy, so she definitely has a tooth size, arch size discrepancy, but people vary very little if you look at the aesthetic norm of kind of what's acceptable. So it's very easy to set that 10 to 11 millimeter wiggle room and fall somewhere within there. So that's kind of what I do.
Perfect. Is there any difference in the quality of the scan when we use the regular versus the small Emerald S tips?
Yeah, the slimline tip probably should be reserved for quadrants. It's just a mathematical algorithm where if you're taking a smaller field of view per scan, the software has to stitch smaller photos together. So for long spans, there's a greater possibility of error, and that's the same case for every scanner on the market. So I typically use the slimline tip for quadrants.
Excellent. All right, a question here. Did you evaluate or eval TMJ positions with the short maxilla?
Yeah, so typically the way that I evaluate TMJ positions is through ultra low dose CBCT, and I'll go ahead and measure things like condylar inclination. You could actually put the patient in centric relation and check and see the seating of the condyle. And I have a couple of YouTube tutorials on that. If you guys are interested, you could go to my YouTube channel to get on how to do that.
Perfect. We are right at 1 o'clock Central Time here. So I did want to be respectful of everybody's time, and I want to send out the CE link, which I'm going to do here right in the chat. You're going to use AGD code 370, and I'll put that in the chat as well, and we'll have it in the email, so don't feel like you need to remember this right now. But like I said, I do want to be respectful. I think there's just one other question, and I believe it goes with the question here, how did you decide of the anterior teeth in case of the severe microdontia? It says, is there any particular analysis that you could use here?
Yeah, I mean, typically the central incisor is 1/16 the length of the face. So you could have measured the full face length, which is from the hairline down to menton, and then did a 1/16 measurement of that to try to pick a kind of a length, ballpark length. But once again, it's all just kind of mathematics and estimates at that point.
Perfect. All right, that was our last question. So basically put us exactly at an hour. I want to thank Dr. Renne, thank you so much for your valuable insight and just experience and showing us those few cases. That was great to see. Thank everybody for attending today. We hope to see you on future webinars with Planmeca. If you do have any questions about the software or products or anything like that, please feel free to reach out to one of our authorized dealer reps or your Planmeca rep. You can find your Planmeca rep on our website. But thank you again, everybody, for joining. Thank you again, Dr. Renne, and we hope to see you guys soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.